This is Glow in the Dark Radio. The science fiction podcast with original independent science fiction written and performed by Mike Luoma, with music by Kevin MacLeod. The Vatican Assassin Trilogy and The Adventures of Alibi Jones by Mike Luoma are available in ebook, trade paperback, and audiobook wherever you find your books online. Get links and details at glowinthedarkradio.com. This is the Science Fiction Podcast, Glow in the Dark Radio. I'm your host, your writer and reader, Mike Luoma, and I have Chapter 28 of Alibi Jones and the Hornet's Nest coming up on this episode. Alibi Jones escaped from Ceres Central in a modified shipping container, but somebody intercepted his container and had him dumped into deep space and left for dead. But the shipping container had been modified by the project into a small ship of sorts, so Alibi was able to steer it back into the orbit of the colony world depot. But as Alibi and his crate ship approached depot, they were mistaken for trash, basically, and have now been targeted to be blown up. We'll see if Alibi can get out of this one as we get into Chapter 28 of Alibi Jones and the Hornet's Nest on this episode of Glow in the Dark Radio. And this episode is one of those big, nice, round numbers I love. I'm not going to do anything special, although I'm not going to run a promo. So I guess that's special, but it is episode 850 of the podcast. 850 weekly episodes going back to September of 2006, on and off. There were little breaks here and there, but for the most part, almost every week, we've been doing the podcast. I've been doing the podcast for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years. The 20th anniversary will be this coming September. And I will celebrate that. I'm going to make a bigger deal out of that than I am out of episode 850. But yes, we have reached episode 850. And a big thank you to patrons who have helped me get this far. You've helped me so much by continuing to support the podcast all this time. And if you want to do so, if you can help us keep going, maybe reach that 20th anniversary, I would love to have you on board. Please go to patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio and become a patron for either $2, $5, or $10 a month, and I would love to have your help. Help us get to our 20th anniversary this fall. A big thank you to those of you who were part of Balticon last week, balticon.org, the place to go if you want to find out what I'm talking about. But it was a great convention, although I would have liked to have been there down in Baltimore in the Inner Harbor. But I did participate in 5 panels over the weekend, via Zoom, virtually. And if you were a part of Balticon or Balticon Anywhere, which is the virtual side, those panels are now becoming available to watch. They've already been edited down and they are being posted on the Balticon programming site. So if you go to balticon.org and go into the programming schedule, and you're doing it through a member portal, you've joined up and are a member of Balticon. It isn't open to the general public. You have to have been a part of the convention or become a part of the convention. But if you do that, you can watch those panels, which are, as I say, now becoming available. There's a link on the actual panel descriptions that will let you watch those. And once again, a big thank you to everybody who was a part of those, my fellow panelists, and to everybody who watched the panels and participated. Well, as promised, I am not doing any promos for this episode because it is episode 850. So we are now going to get into Chapter 28 of Alibi Jones and the Hornet's Nest on Glow in the Dark Radio. Alibi jumped across to the container's controls to see if the crate's shipping beacon was turned on. It wasn't. They must have turned off the beacon when they set him adrift. He hadn't noticed. He turned it back on and hoped for the best. "Wait, got something," the voice on the open comm said. "Hold your fire. That's a project object, according to its beacon. Hit it with a holding beam." Alibi lurched forward as the shipping container came to a sudden stop. Should I tell them I'm in here? Nah, shouldn't be necessary. They should turn me over to the project. Would rather deal with project people at this point. He watched as the Stinger ship used the holding beam to swing his container back towards the aft end of the vessel. Two of the Stinger's crew then came out and moved the container into the ship's hold. As Alibi watched from inside his container, the ship's captain and first officer came to the hold to personally inspect their new find. He couldn't hear them. Either the external mics were dead or couldn't pick up their conversation. They didn't waste much time assessing the container, giving it a quick visual once-over. Then they left Alibi in the dark. Before too long, the lights came back on, and a safe ground crew from Depot entered the hold. They attached grav handles and floated the container off the Stinger ship. Alibi watched from the container's interior as they floated his crate across Depot's port and into a project holding area. They lowered the container back to the ground. "Gotta get out of here." Alibi didn't wait. He opened the secret door and slid out of the container. He sealed the door shut, seamless, behind him. A couple of people from the ground crew were still nearby. Alibi kept the container between them as he looked around the holding area for the way out. "The delivery guys just reported it missing," Alibi overheard one of the ground crew report, "after it had been recovered. And the project crew already came by here once to try to pick it up. Kind of suspicious if you ask me." "Who's asking you?" another joked. Alibi left them to their witty repartee and crept out of the holding area. He emerged into a part of the spaceport he knew, but not well, still inside the safe facility. "I'll feel better when I get out into the public spaces, although it is good to know my people are here somewhere. Bet they're the project crew." Looking down, he decided to do as his dress suggested and began jogging. He made his way through the safe facility and out into the main port, nodding at anyone who made eye contact, but not stopping. "Just out for a jog. Don't mind me." Alibi needed to find out where his cruiser was berthed and get in touch with his crew. He jogged down the concourse into Depot's port's main passenger terminal. The bright lights and flashy signs were designed to attract travelers very different from Alibi. He found it easy to resist their beckoning as he walked past, on his way to a more civilized place, the Pilot's Lounge. The Pilot's Lounge on Depot was a 3-story entertainment complex, 3 floors of bars and restaurants, with cheap sleep cubicles on a 4th floor above, available at an hourly rate. Alibi preferred a dive bar called The Other Place, tucked away in the back of the 2nd floor where people could read, write, do whatever, and be left alone. He headed there. Kat knew it was a good place to look for him, and Alibi could look up where the cruiser was berthed while he waited. Alibi walked in and looked around the bar. Some sort of familiar faces, but no one that stood out for good or bad. No Kat or Emily or even Brisby. He headed over to the bar and sat down in an empty chair. "Could I get a Depot downdraft?" Alibi ordered. The bartender placed a pint in front of him. Alibi sipped a little off the top so he wouldn't spill, then lifted the pint for a real drink. When he put the glass down, a man stood next to him who hadn't been there a moment before. Unlike the others in the bar, he had a somewhat familiar-looking face. "Alibi Jones?" "Depends on who's asking," Alibi said. "Name's Hector. Hector Ruiz," he said, extending his hand. Alibi shook it, wary. "Owner and captain of the Libra Campista." "Yeah, I'm Alibi Jones," Alibi said. "Nice to meet you," Hector said. "You're kind of famous."
Some would say infamous, Alibi said. He racked his brain, trying to remember where he knew the man from. He'd seen him somewhere before. Pleasure to meet you. Yeah, heard you practically got run out of the Solar Alliance, Hector said. Now trying to make it out here on the Depot Fringe, huh? Something like that, Alibi said. Running cargo and stuff. Well, it's not my pleasure, but I'm working for Bill Gentry, Hector said. Paying off a debt. The man has peculiar late fees. Calls in favors. Has people like me do things like this. Alibi nodded, but remained silent. And what this is, you see, is that he sent me to help you set up your dues schedule, Hector said, explaining. Gentry said he spoke with you before? He did, Alibi said. I've been wondering when I'd hear from him next. Ta-da! Hector said. He spread his arms comically. Alibi gave him a deadpan stare back. Hector rummaged in a pocket in his jumpsuit and pulled out a secure crystal. It's all on there. Where to send your payments, when, what percentage you owe on what goods. Give it to your business manager, but make sure she knows it's not for public consumption, eh? Got it, Alibi said, as he accepted the crystal from Hector. A flash of recognition hit Alibi as he touched the crystal. He's the guy who first saw the ghost ship. Now I remember. But I can't let him know that I know he reported it to the Solar Alliance. That's not public knowledge. Do I? Have we met before? Hector asked. You look more familiar than I thought you would. Don't think so, Alibi said. But it's funny, I thought the same thing when I saw you. Maybe we've bumped into each other before. Maybe. Didn't know for sure if I'd find you here, Hector said. Saw your ship was due in, but wasn't sure if you'd landed yet. I'm coming back from a side trip, Alibi said. Wasn't with the ship. Meeting them here. Gotcha, Hector said. Do you have time for a beer? Alibi asked him. Hector looked at him, puzzled. He nodded at the crystal. I just gave you that, and you want to buy me a beer? Why not? Alibi said. It's not you asking me for money. Not everybody gets that, Hector said. Thanks. I think I will. He waved over at a heavy-set big guy by the door. The man nodded back and visibly relaxed. Hector sat down on a stool next to Alibi as Alibi called the bartender over. The bartender took Hector's order. Alibi added it to his and then settled up his tab. How long have you been working out here? Alibi asked. Almost 11 years now, Hector said. Just you? Alibi asked. Nah, Hector said. Got 2 ships with full crews. Nice little operation. Mind if I ask why you're working for Gentry? You can ask, Hector said. He gave Alibi a look that said he wasn't about to answer. But then he smiled. I'm kidding. It's like I said, just repaying a small debt doing this stuff. Missed a meeting and a payment. So Gentry has me reminding other people about their meetings and payments for about a month, in addition to my regular business. Almost done. Another week to go. Sounds like Gentry has an interesting sense of humor, Alibi said. Sense of humor? Hector asked. Don't know if it's humor. I don't feel like laughing, you know? Gotcha, Alibi said. He didn't know why, but he kind of liked this Hector. Seemed like an honest man. So bottom line, it's best not to miss a meeting with Gentry. You got it, Hector said. Why did you miss your meeting? Alibi asked. Maybe I can get him to talk about the Rode ship. That I'm not going to tell you, Hector said, shaking his head. You wouldn't believe me anyway. Alibi arched an eyebrow. Oh, really? Let's just say, there are some pretty strange things out here on the fringe, Hector said. And we ran into one of them. Made us late for our appointment. Sounds mysterious, Alibi said. It was something, all right, Hector said. Alibi? A woman's voice called out his name. Alibi looked for the source and saw Emily and Kat walking his way through the bar. He waved. Emily smiled at him. He grinned back. Could get to like her in this timeline, too. Your crew? Hector asked, grabbing his attention back. Alibi nodded. Hector drained the rest of his beer. I'll let you be then. Good to meet you, Alibi Jones. He extended his right hand. Alibi shook it. Hector turned to leave, brushing past Emily and Kat on his way. Who is that? Emily asked. Another ship owner, Alibi said. Name's Hector Ruiz. Alibi held up the crystal. He delivered this, a gift, from Billy Gentry. It's our tribute instructions.
Tribute?
Cat asked. Gotta pay to play out here on the depot fringe, Alibi explained. And Bill Gentry is evidently the one collecting the dues out here. Knew this was coming, just didn't know when or how. Alibi handed the crystal to Emily. Take it back with you to the ship, see what he's asking for, then let me know what you need, Alibi said. Why me? She asked. Part of doing business out here, he said. And you're our business manager. Thanks, she said, her tone loaded with sarcasm. Alibi stood up from his bar stool. Let's go, he said. Been a while since I've seen the cruiser. Longer since I've seen the base.
It is still there,
Cat said. Alibi laughed. What? Cat said, confused by Alibi's reaction. Pure comedy, Alibi said, mimicking the way Cat had been saying the term. You made a funny, Cat.
I do not understand your comedy,
Cat said. Not to worry, Cat, Alibi said. I don't always understand it either. Emily chuckled. Cat seemed confused. Don't worry about it, Cat, Alibi said. Come on. He led the other two out of the bar. Much better, Alibi said, as he settled into his captain's seat. Home again, jiggity jig, as Ananita likes to say. Home? Emily asked. She strapped herself into the seat on the bridge behind Cat in the co-pilot's chair, on Alibi's right. This ship, the cruiser, and this bridge feel more like home than any of my apartments, any place I stay for short periods, Alibi said. Even my aunt's place on Ceres, where I grew up. That's her place, you know. My place on Cat's Eye is rented out to some stranger. I've only been out at the Hornet's Nest a few months, so this ship is the closest thing I have to a home. I've missed it. That sounds kind of sad, Emily said. Sorry?
My home is on her, Cat said, and I miss it dearly.
Sorry, Cat, Alibi said. My home is the Force, Emily said, and truth be told, working undercover, this covert ops stuff, feels a little like being away from that home, even though we're still in the safe.
You and Alibi are, Cat said. I am not in the safe, but an ally.
Yes, you are, Alibi said. You're both Alibi's allies. That's silly, Emily said. Good, Alibi said. Thought we were all getting a little silly here. Silly is good. Alibi called up the cruiser's controls and began powering up the ship. Cat, start the pre-flight, Alibi said. Let's head home. Once they'd cleared transpace and switched back to conventional engines, Alibi called up Krish as they flew back to the Hornet's Nest. He wanted to know how his disappearance from the hospital had gone over. At first they were crazed, Krish said. Panicked. I tried to calm them down. Told them you had checked yourself out. And I had no idea where you'd gone. They started to call you a fugitive, until I asked if that meant you had been a prisoner. Then I apologized for not realizing that had been your status, silly old man that I am, in answer to which I was assured you were not a prisoner. Then how can he be a fugitive, I asked them. Why couldn't he check himself out? And, Alibi prodded. Medical observation, Krish said. Alien tech, good of humanity, stuff like that. Nothing very coherent. I pulled rank and dismissed their arguments. As the senior project scientist on this case, I said that I believe we've had more than enough time to study the poor man here in a hospital, and we've learned nothing. Better to put him back in the field, see if the stimulus there makes a difference. Something like that. And they accepted that, Alibi asked. Somehow, I don't see Van and Curry agreeing to... To a degree, Krish said, interrupting. You are not considered a fugitive. But... You are to be kept under regular observation, Krish said. In the field. What? Alibi asked. No fucking way am I going to be under constant watch. How? Who? Wait, Krish, what the hell? So many questions, Krish said. Please, let me finish. Sorry, Krish, Alibi said. Go ahead. As a condition of backing off of Fugitive, Dr. Van demanded a project doctor be assigned to your crew, Krish said. I think he saw himself out at your Hornet's Nest, Alibi. Fat chance. Well, anyway, I agreed, Krish said. What? Alibi was furious in an instant. How could you? It had to be done. To keep you free, Alibi, Krish said. Besides, I went above Van's head and made other arrangements. His demands were met, but not as he thought they would be. Alibi calmed down a little. What do you mean? Alibi asked. Well, I did some research, Krish said. I see your base has many rooms and apartments. It does, Alibi said, and we don't use many of them. I would not think that you would, Krish said, but you will be needing to fix one up for this old fool, who volunteered to be your new observer. What, Krish? You? Alibi said, shocked. What about your temporal research lab? How can you come out to the Hornet's Nest? Dr. Shinose will take care of what's left of the temporal lab, as she has been, Alibi, Krish said. They trimmed our budget to the bone. We don't even have funding for new research and experiments at this time, Alibi. They pay our salaries and keep the buildings running, but that's about all, sad to say. But she'll do fine. The lab will be fine. And very clean. Alibi digested the news. Krish? Out here? I don't know. Yeah, sorry about the budget thing too, Krish, Alibi said. Just thinking this through. You're going to join us out at our base? Do we need to come pick you up? Yes, Krish said. And no, I will be joining you, but I will not be needing you to come pick me up. I have made my own arrangements, you see. I see. Project ship, Krish said. For me and my things. Things? Alibi asked. I will need some lab space, Krish said, matter of fact, in addition to apartments. I'm coming with some baggage, you see. Baggage. Oh, yeah, I see, Alibi said. Love the guy, but not sure I want him around all the time. Of course, if he has a lab, that might mean he won't want to come with us out in the cruiser too much. Maybe? If the project and the SA have decided I need to be observed, could do a lot worse than Krish. When should we expect you? Alibi asked. Let's see, Krish said. I need to wrap things up here first. 3 weeks? Something like that. Hate to guess. I will let you know when I'm more certain of my timetable. Okay then, I guess, Alibi said. Keep me informed, Krish. Not immediately. That makes me feel better for some reason. Gotta get used to the idea. No, that's fine, thanks. Just wanted to check in. Been traveling, Alibi said, as he signed off the comm. He tried calling again as soon as they'd gotten back to base. As the worried nephew, he could make a call into Safe Command without blowing his cover. Just another citizen asking about his loved one. Not a member of Safe Covert Ops, nope. Hell, I could call Nico fucking Constantine himself in this case. In truth, he tried not to worry. But his aunt still hadn't returned to Ceres. The safe now had her listed officially as potentially missing. Anita Capituna could take care of herself, if anyone could. But it wasn't like her not to check in. Alibi sighed and looked around his base office, trying to think of what he could do next. Feel kind of helpless. This sucks. Cannot tell you how surprised I was to hear it was you, Alibi Jones, calling me, the smirking man said, looking at Alibi over the comm. Why? Thought your people left me lost in space? I'm glad you accepted my call, Mr. Prime Representative, Alibi said. Wasn't sure you would. Call me Nico, Constantine said. Can I call you Alibi? Sure, Alibi said. Nico?
That was Chapter 28 of Alibi Jones and the Hornet's Nest. part of the Adventures of Alibi Jones Chronological Omnibus, as we serialize it on Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. Speaking with the enemy. in a sense. Well, Alibi survived the shipping container ship, and after meeting Hector Ruiz and getting Billy Gentry's payment instructions, Alibi and his crew got back to the Hornet's Nest, but it seems they're going to have a new addition there soon, as Krish comes on board as an observer for the project and the Solar Alliance. Meanwhile, Alibi is worried enough about his missing Aunt Anita that he's called the man he's pretty sure hates him and his aunt, the current ruler of the Solar Alliance, the prime representative, the prime rep, Nico Constantine. Call me Nico. We'll pick things up there on our next episode. Chapter 29 of Alibi Jones and the Hornet's Nest. Well, once again, we are celebrating the 850th episode of this podcast. I'm celebrating it. I've been putting it together all by myself, DIY since the beginning, since 2006, September of 2006. So we're going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary, my 20th anniversary, coming up in September. But right now, it's worth celebrating, worth noting that it is 850, episode 850 of our weekly podcast, Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. And it wouldn't happen without my patrons, so thank you again for being a patron. If you're not, please consider becoming one. You can do so at patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio, and you can do so for $2, $5, or $10 a month. I'd love to have you on board. And that is all for this week. I'm your host, your writer and reader, Mike Luoma. Thank you again for listening to Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. This podcast presentation is copyright 2026 by Michael F. Luoma and is protected under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License, CC by NCND 4.0. Music by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his work at Incompetech.com. Mike's books are available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook, wherever you find books online. Get links and more details at glowinthedarkradio.com and mikeluoma.com. This has been a presentation of Glow-in-the-Dark Radio.